been reporting to you on the developments of escalations towards World War III for some time now, warning that Europe, according to top economist and forecaster Martin Armstrong, is absolutely determined to go to war with Russia. This story comes to us from antiwar.com. NATO's top military officer floats idea of preemptive strike on Russia. It says that NATO's top military officer has floated the idea of the Western alliance conducting a, quote, preemptive strike on Russia, a comment that drew sharp rebuke from Moscow. Admiral Giuseppe Cavo Dragone, the chair of NATO's military committee, made the provocative comment in the context of discussing alleged Russian hybrid attacks in Europe. He told the Financial Times that a preemptive strike could be considered as a, quote, defensive action, but added that it is further away from our normal way of thinking and behaviour. Quote, being more aggressive compared with the aggressivity of our counterpart could be an option. The issues are legal framework, jurisdictional framework. Who is going to do this? End quote. That is what the Italian admiral said. The Russian Foreign Ministry called Dragone's comments extremely irresponsible and said it could be an effort to undermine peace talks around Ukraine. Quote, people who make such statements should be aware of the risks and potential consequences, including for the alliance members themselves, said Russian spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. Zakharova also criticized NATO officials for constantly hyping the threat of a Russian attack on Europe, saying that, quote, against the backdrop of the anti-Russian hysteria being whipped up by the alliance and the fear-mongering about an inevitable attack by Russia on the bloc's member states, such statements not only add fuel to the fire, but also seriously escalate the already existing confrontation, end quote. While NATO officials are constantly claiming, without providing evidence, that Russia is involved in sabotage attacks in Europe, the US and NATO are openly supporting drone and missile attacks inside Russian territory. The US recently restarted its support for Ukrainian strikes inside Russia using US and British-provided missiles. This is from Shadow of Ezra on X. Vladimir Putin warns that Russia is ready to go to war with all of Europe if that's the path European leaders choose. He insists that Moscow has no intention of starting a war, but says if Europe ignites it, Russia will be the one to finish it. He adds that facing Europe would be nothing like fighting Ukraine, calling it a showdown that would erase any hope of future negotiations. Take a listen.
I've said that 100 times. We have no plans of fighting against Europe. But if Europe wants to fight and they start this fight, then we are ready right now. There is no doubt about this. But the only question is, if Europe starts the war, unleashes this war, because that's not Ukraine. With Ukraine, we use some surgical means. We are trying to be really careful. Because you understand why. This is not a war in the direct sense of the word. And Europe, all of a sudden, wants to start a war. And if it does start a war, then very rapidly there might be a situation where we have no one to negotiate with.
This all comes as the Netherlands also announces new military support worth close to $300 million for Ukraine. Funds will reportedly supply air defense systems, F-16 ammunition, other urgently needed equipment, says the Defense Ministry. Just last month, General Fabien Mandon, France's chief of the defense staff, told the French people that they must be prepared to lose their children for a war with Russia. Take a listen.
Ils tiendront dans leur mission s'ils sentent ce qu'il nous manque, et c'est là que vous avez un rôle majeur, c'est la force d'âme pour accepter de nous faire mal pour protéger ce que l'on est. Si notre pays flanche parce qu'il n'est pas prêt à accepter de perdre ses enfants, parce qu'il faut dire les choses, de souffrir économiquement parce que les priorités iront à de la production de défense, par exemple. Si on n'est pas prêt à ça, alors on est en risque.
And now France has announced that they will be introducing voluntary military service because, of course, that is far more palatable than telling people that they're reintroducing mandatory conscription straight off the bat after they've told people that they need to be prepared to lose the nation's children to fight this war. This is from ABC. France to reintroduce voluntary military service amid growing threat of war with Russia. French President Emmanuel Macron says France will introduce a voluntary military service of 10 months. It comes almost 3 decades after France scrapped conscription. The voluntary military service for people mostly aged between 18 and 19 would begin next year. Earlier this year, we interviewed economist Martin Armstrong, who warned that NATO was preparing to send 250,000 troops into Russia. He said as millions were abandoning a doomed Europe. We're going to link that interview for you in the description below so that everyone can watch and re-watch if they've already seen it. Vital information in that interview. And let's not forget the recent scandal that exploded where Zelensky's top aide resigned amid a widening corruption scandal. Mr. Yermak stepped down amid a spiraling $100 million embezzlement scandal that has already led to the dismissal of 2 cabinet ministers and even threatened to topple Zelensky's entire cabinet. Make no mistake, the Zelensky regime is collapsing before our very eyes, with Zelensky pursuing the total destruction of the Orthodox Church and Christianity in Ukraine and ongoing corruption being exposed on the regular. Thus, they are desperate to escalate to something completely irrational and world-destroying like war with nuclear-armed Russia to protect their agenda. Martin Armstrong also maintains that Europe essentially has no choice. It's bankrupt and would all else fails go to war. So this is indeed multifaceted. What none of these leaders who demand that you sacrifice your children at the altar of the globalist and military-industrial complex tell you is precisely that. These wars, just like wars of old, are fought following a sustained campaign of propaganda and 99.99999% of the time have nothing to do with what the stated intent is. Spread democracy, save the children, by sacrificing them for the collapse of whatever is remaining post-COVID in order to usher in global control and technocracy. That is the outcome they are seeking with no exception. Is anyone seeking peace at this point? We do have ongoing talks between Russia and the US and an apparent attempt to stop nuclear war on the surface. But all signs point to Europe being set on this goal of world war, with escalations rising every week at this point.